morning and welcome to our Step Back in Time program. This is a program where we are taking a look at personal accounts of people who lived in and around Waynesboro many years ago, and to give you an idea of some of the history told in person by those people living. And we're taking our stories here for a while from the book The Lilac Bush, and it is a personal account of life in and around Waynesboro from 1758 to 1952, and it was written by George Beard Coffman. So we're going to skip a little ahead in the book today, and we're going to talk about another man who has come to Waynesboro. Did you ever wonder what set of circumstances brought a person from halfway around the world to this area to make their home? Henry Eichholz was born in Austria in 1864. He grew up in Germany, the son of an army captain and an Austrian girl. He would have been born in Germany had his mother not walked across a field to her home in Austria, seeking the care of her mother in the coming event. Tuberculosis was a common sickness in the area at the time, and many people died from it, including some of the family connections. It could have been one of the reasons that this young man was attracted to outdoor work. Flowers, plants, and growing things interested him greatly. He worked for a florist and then another florist, learning all he could. In his early 20s, he was working for a florist in the Charlottenburg section of Berlin. He was after additional experience in flower arrangement. When one of his fellow workers grumbled about delivering flowers in the evening, he offered to take over. Many of the deliveries were up the Friedrichstrasse to Unter den Linden, where the concert hall was located. The deliveries were made through the stage door and into a new world. He hung around and made friends with the stagehands. The operas were just as wonderful from backstage as out front, and it cost him nothing. The love for musical drama acquired here was to give him much enjoyment the rest of his life. America had been in the back of his mind for some time. He worked in England for a while and wrestled with the language. He would need it. In due time, he returned to Germany for a discussion with two aunts, with whom he had lived for some time after his father died. The decision made, he sailed for New York as a steerage passenger. He arrived in New York in 1894 with $41 in his pocket, 19 of which he gave to a couple who needed it to get to their destination in Ohio. He took a job in a restaurant, and the first day, while looking through a newspaper, noticed an advertisement for help by a florist in Westerly, Rhode Island. Through the Helping Hand organization, he got word to the florist, and he landed the job. The work was all right, and his employer treated him fine, but he did not like the weather and the surrounding country. Something kept running through his mind: Pennsylvania. He had to see Pennsylvania. He knew it was the stopping place for many Germans in past years. His employer thought so much of him that he got him work with a friend in Pittsburgh and told him that if he did not like his new job, he should return to Westerly. Henry traveled through some beautiful country on the train. Pittsburgh just could not come up to it. Through florist channels, he heard of a business for rent in Waynesboro. He was soon backtracking at Harrisburg change trains for Waynesboro. The train ride down the valley was interesting, and he was soon walking the streets of a small town. It was just the thing he had been looking for. He talked to local merchants and got a feel of the people. The Knitterhouse family owned the floral establishment, and they agreed to rent to him. The greenhouse was down Potomac Street near the Green Hill Cemetery. He decided the deal was all right. A house was included in the offer. It was late in the year of 1894. He hustled around working day and night. After 2 years of this, he went to New York and married Alvina Sumner, a girl of German parentage whom he had known, and brought her to a house which needed a woman badly. Henry continued his hard work. He had a green thumb. He prospered. In a few years, he started looking for land on which he could build his own house and greenhouses. In past years, in the places where he had worked, he had run into too much water.
After big rains and spring thaws, so many of the greenhouses had water on their floors, running through and causing damage. He kept thinking of hills instead of hollows. He was attracted to McDermott's Hill, just out past 5th Street and Clayton Avenue. He walked the fields. The view was beautiful. His investigations turned up land that could be bought. It was 13.5 acres, the entire top of the hill on the right side of the road, just after you leave town. He purchased the hilltop in 1899. The land was overgrown, an old orchard had to be cleared. Directly on top the hill was the house, part log and part weatherboard. McDermott's vacated the house and Henry moved his flock in. They now had 3 children. There were men working in town who were glad for extra work. They came out and helped him clear the property, and soon it was in good shape. In 1900, he constructed his first greenhouse. The water supply, a cistern, and a well were not adequate for the home and greenhouse, but the nearest borough water line was at 5th and Chestnut Streets. The distance was at least a quarter mile. Since the water company would not install a line, Henry had an 1.25 inch line put in himself. He asked one of the Waynesboro citizens who owned a corner lot nearby if he would be interested in sharing the expense. The gentleman declined. About a year later, this man started to build himself a nice house. He hooked into Henry's line. So, Henry's line had cost him $219. Mr. W.T. Omwake, a director in the water company, arranged things so that the deal came out all right. He saw to it that Henry received a water rate low enough to pay him for the cost of the line. By 1908, Henry had progressed enough to build himself a nice big brick house with a large porch overlooking the country toward the mountain. The view is still beautiful at any time of the year. He now moved his wife and by now 6 children into the new house. 100 or 150 years ago, the immigrants landed at Philadelphia and trudged along for weeks and sometimes months, hauling their meager belongings over the poorest roads and at times just trails, until they found the spot that pleased them. Henry Eichholz came alone, picking up work in numerous places, just keeping ahead in cash, until he found his ideal spot. He rode the train. The knitter houses took a chance when they rented to him, and so did the bank when he was ready to build his house and greenhouses. Henry's dream was coming true. And we'll end there for the day. Thank you for joining us. Come back again next week to our Step Back in Time program, where we'll continue some more out of the book, The Lilac Bush, written by George Beard Coffman. Have a wonderful week.